Okay, so I am here today with Heather Younger to talk about resiliency. And Heather is an author, a TEDx speaker, and a professional in the employee experience and employee engagement space. Heather, thank you for being with us today. And
yes, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Great. So let's open it up and talk about resiliency. Never a time where resiliency was more important. Talk about your perspective on resiliency today.
Yes, I do agree exactly what you said. There's really not a time right now where it's more important. I think about resiliency. Wow, I feel like it's something that's followed me my entire life. So when I look at it, it's this idea of having things that come our way, whatever that it might be, and how we have the ability to kind of ping pong them off of us. So it's like people might think of it as thickness of skin. I like to visualize it as almost like a ping pong, and it just, comes our way, and we hit it back, and we keep moving. And I do a lot of visualization. So for me, visualizing where I want to be, and irrespective of what's happening around me, helps me move forward a lot.
I've been thinking a lot about resiliency as well in terms of organizational resiliency and kind of drilling that down to what does that mean for leaders in an organization and what does that mean for employees within an organization? How does resiliency ladder up?
Well, I think I like that term, ladder up. That's awesome. I think the key is first that we have to first take personal responsibility. So each one of us, from the leader down to the front line, all have to, work on ourselves and have that ping pong effect I'm talking about, each individually, because so organizational leaders can help grow that resilience in their people. But in the end, they have to start with themselves. But exercises internally would be really good to do. So getting groups of people together, either like right now via Zoom, and talking about kind of our how I talk about it in my TEDx. I talk about this idea of irrational fears. What's going on in our brains that are making us feel, out of whack, of fearful, of the uncertainty or whatever that might be, and putting kind of the worst case scenario, what that might be, down, and then as a group talking through. Then, okay, now let's look at the rational side of what's actually happening, and maybe even what positive things could be coming out as a result of this. Because what happens is in a space like this, our amygdala in our brain hijacks any sense of reason that we have. And so we want to kind of put that in check and put ourselves more in a space of rational thinking. And we have to be really intentional about doing that. And so organizational leaders can help their people all the way down the front line do that just by doing that exercise I described.
I love that. And so I can see how helpful that would be as a business, the collective of that. What do leaders need to be cultivating within themselves to be able to do that more readily?
Well, I mean, here's what I can do. I can speak from experience, a long history. I'm in my late 40s, and I can speak from experience of having quite a bit of adversity come my way, mostly early on in my life. And what I learned of how to come out of that. And I do talk about this in my TED Talk when I talk about reframing from an organizational perspective with the team, and then what we do individually to ourselves. And so visualization that I talked about earlier is a big part of that, but also putting all of the cards on the table for yourself. So, what's actually in reality happening right around you right now. So we just put it out there, write it down, talk about it, whatever you need to do. And then again, step yourself back from like all the fears that go into those realities, kind of the irrational thoughts and the things that make you feel uneasy, and then step back from that and try to be objective. And you have to do this in your mind. So this is not like, I pinch myself and I'm objective. I do talk about in that talk where I'm going through this time where I'm feeling uneasy or not good enough or stressed, whatever it is I'm feeling. And then all of a sudden I just kind of look up and go, wait a minute. There's another way to think about this. And so for me, it's like a little trigger that I do. I like to think of it in my brain as like a trigger or a switch that I press on and off that allows me to kind of shift my thinking from this like emotional, fearful place to, okay, what else can I be getting to right now? What else can come out of this? What else, how should I be looking at this? And so I think the key is you're going to have to play a lot of mind games right now. And they are effective. When you talk to people who, are billionaires, or those who have done really well on a large national stage, or people who have just done well in life in any career, you'll talk to them and they'll talk to you about how they have done visualization, how they have done maybe some mental tricks in their head. But it's really about what we think about. So what we think about, we bring about. What we think about, we walk in the direction of. And also, if you ever notice, they talk about these tests where if you are thinking about getting a new car and all of a sudden you drive around and you keep seeing that new car everywhere, that's exactly what happens when you change your mind. And so I think that's the very first thing, is changing your mind. Playing some of those mind games with yourself is going to be the first and the most important step to moving forward and changing your behaviors and then your results as well.
I'm a very strong believer in visualization as well. And I had read this tip that's very similar to what you're talking about. I think is super relevant. They were talking about this concept of kind of assessing where you are and then stepping back away from it. And they were talking about it as a concept that they were calling self-distancing. And I just felt so beautiful in today's context of social distancing that in addition to social distancing, which is necessary for our physical health and safety, that we also need to be practicing self-distancing, which is really important for our emotional and mental safety. And I
love it.
What you're saying too is really, really similar.
I love it. It's even like now the words that we use, being really mindful of the words we use as leaders. Think about when you look at the news, you hear, crisis and pandemic, and there's lots of things that you hear that they are in the dictionary. Yes, they're real words, but what do they do to us from a emotional well-being place and a physical or physiological state? When we use those words, oh my gosh, we're in this crisis. Oh my gosh, we're in this. And if we keep using those words, it produces certain things in us, which will then again make us move in different ways. So how about we just change our language? That's another thing we can do to change the environment.
As leaders, what does that mean for leadership communications? What tips would you have for leadership teams today?
Well, I think that from a leadership communication perspective, I think that we need to show up strong and compassionate. So, for example, right now, there are a lot of organizations that are having to do furloughs and layoffs, and some of those are necessary evils. It just depends on what's happening in the business. If they haven't had access to the loans that we hear about the government's giving out to everybody, which seems to be kind of an interesting or futile effort in a large degree. But in the end, sometimes those things happen. But if we can do it in a way that leaves people feeling like they're leaving with dignity, that they are on pause with dignity, and we go with them along the journey and show them ways and give them resources that help them get through this tough time, because we're all going through a tough time. And again, along the way, we check in on them and we show that we care about them as people. It's going to make all the difference. It'll make even more difference for us a year from now when we look back at our workforce and say, who is still with us after this crisis? Hate that word. After this wild ride that we're on, who's with us? And after that, we can go back and reflect. What did we do? What did we communicate with them? What did we fail to communicate? How did we show up? So right now, show up with strength, but make sure you counterbalance that with compassion. That would be my biggest advice.
Heather, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being with us to talk to our viewers about this today. And I wish you health and safety as we continue to roll through current circumstances.
Thank you so much. It's been great.